Chapter 5. Don't go into the tool shed. After we fixed the chicken paddock fence, I was not happy at all. I was cold, tired, and knew that tomorrow, the next day, Mum was leaving and taking William with her. I would be alone. I tried not to let it consume me, but it did anyway. It wasn't right, but it was happening all the same. I had zero control. My only shred of comfort was that William would be going back to school and I wouldn't, for the time being. It certainly wasn't my fault I got suspended, but it's clear that this was my punishment all the same. I was destined for a different kind of schooling, sentenced to be Da's fart catcher, a hideous title that Da explained they used to call footmen or butlers back in his army days. I'd most definitely prefer trusted helper, personal assistant, or epic muscle manager, but unfortunately, fart catcher stuck. Yet another thing I had no control over. Lunch was a cold, runny boiled egg wrapped in squashed sausage and hidden inside dirty breadcrumbs. It was served with some cold fish and 3 lettuce leaves. I didn't really know what that was about, but I was too hungry to care. After we ate, I had to wheel Da to his tool shed. It was huge, with a sloped roof, and glued onto the side of the farmhouse. It would take William about 20 seconds to run the length of it, but you're not allowed to run in there, or touch anything, or even sneeze. This tool shed holds over 100 years of usefulness, Da explained, clearly excited to reintroduce me to his workshop. 1,000 shelves and pigeonholes, each with something utterly unique and interesting inside. Any repair, project or emergency, it's all here, my little habbity-hoy. It was curious to see Da so animated over something so rubbish. Literal rubbish. Stuffed into holes, rammed onto shelves, stacked crap upon crap upon crap. Buckets of rusty nails, broken tools, everything. It was like the junk lady's house from Labyrinth. At home we have one hammer. Here you could spend half a day choosing which one to use. And I've never seen so many cobwebs in one place in my entire life. In the middle of the tool shed, next to a massive saw built into an old table, there was something covered in a sheet. Da whipped off the wrapping, full of pride. "Introducing the Galloping Goose." Da waited for some kind of reaction. "It's another wheelchair," I said politely, but this one was utterly ridiculous. Da excitedly pointed around the wheelchair, acting like Doc Emmett Brown from Back to the Future. Fat wheels from an old barrow, the arms from a Parker Knoll armchair, and this was my father's old shaving mirror, affixed to the end of a golf club. Everything recycled. Marvellous, isn't it? Da swung around the mirror to demonstrate, presumably so he could force an eye-to-eye lecture onto his poor chair-pusher. And this old pop horn came from Mother's old baby Austin. Da squeezed the horn enthusiastically. "It's the creation of a madman," I thought out loud. I'm not sure what reaction Da expected. The evidence is there for all to see. There was even a tea saucer glued to one of the arms. Everything was literally held together with glue, gaffer tape and cable ties. Piffle bunk. You've just lost your imagination. It's an off-road wheelchair, and a fine one at that. It looked far heavier than the sensible hospital wheelchair, and I'm pretty sure it was about to become my problem. An hour later, my 12-year-old lungs were on fire. It was bad enough that the dust-filled tool shed caused my allergies to flare, but now the cold afternoon air was mocking me, seeking out my bones in the most hideous manner. The wheelchair weighed a ton, and William, sitting on Da's lap, mocked my every word as I huffed and puffed across the rutted fields. This day could not get any worse. Da's pretty good at bribery or emotional blackmail, depending on which way you look at it. He knew that after my soul-destroying lunch, I'd crumble at the offer of a chow mein pot noodle and chocolate. I also knew that Mum had had a hand in my manipulation, because I found her note in Nana's kitchen drawer when I was looking for batteries for William's leap pad. Ways to get Brandon off his butt and help out. 1. Use guilt. 2. 1 packet of Mawams equals 1 medium chore. 3. His face will disintegrate if he doesn't clean his teeth. 4. He will pretty well much do anything for £2. 5. If in doubt, add a chow mein pot noodle. 6. If still not working, add 0.1. Unfortunately, it was too late before I realised I'd been had again. But at least I had £2 and a hot pot noodle to look forward to when I got back. I stopped for a much-needed rest, and William ran off to find a big throwy stick to take back to Wrigley. "Shh!" Da pointed to the hedge. "What?" I replied, the cold air biting my tongue like an angry snake. "It's a nuthatch." Da seemed pretty excited. I spotted the small bird shuffling up and down a tree, clicking its beak in and out of the bark. "Incredible birds, and rare too." Da felt my lack of interest very quickly. "One of the bravest birds for a tiddler. I've seen them see off a kestrel before with my very own eyes." Fantastic! The great unwanted bird masterclass was rearing its ugly head again. I blew on my hands and called William back. Da tutted. "Have you ever been out of town, boy?" I chose to ignore him and resumed pushing the 10-ton wheelchair across the soggy field. William clambered back onto Da, pointing excitedly into the distance. "Da! The forest! Where the trolls live! Giddy up, bub!" The wheels sank further into the mud. I didn't giddy up, decidedly giddying down. "Can we visit the trolls in the wood, please?" Da patted William on the knees, shushing him. "Not today." "But what about Fofo Trot? He might be starved hungry," William pleaded. "Yeah, Da, let's go and see some trolls," I scoffed, suddenly deciding not to hold back my outdoor frustrations. "Can we, Da? Can we? I promise to be quiet as a mouse." "Not today, William," Da replied. Defiantly, I sped up my walk and headed for the looming forest in the distance. My arms, legs, and lungs screamed at me to stop, but I needed to emphasize my annoyance. "Not today, Brandon. It's getting late now." Da sounded irked. The wind licked my cheeks as I ignored my grandfather and pushed on hard. "Brandon!" Da was not a happy man. I was laughing now, pushing hard. Freezing tears streamed down my cheek. "Brandon! Enough!" Da shouted. "Trolls, trolls, we're going to see the trolls," William sang, running and pushing, running and pushing. "Stop, Brandon! Stop!" I was sure the velociraptor veins were pulsating under Da's cap now as the huge trees loomed in front of us and the forest grew closer. "Can we feed them chocolate? Can we sing to them?" William screeched. "Yeah, Da. Do they eat chocolate and sweeties?" I mimicked. Pushing and running, running and pushing. We were now just 100 meters or so from the edge of Pitchbury Wood. "Trolls, come out and see me!" William screeched. Pushing, running, running. pushing. "Stop, Brandon, stop! You don't know what you're doing!" All of me hurt, from the laughing, from the pushing, the cold wind taking hold of my guts, but I ran as hard as I could. Faster, harder, closer. Whee! William screeched his loudest screeches, and then Dar exploded with rage. "Do as you're told, you disobedient town rat F-word!" Dar shouted ferociously, grabbing my arm from over his shoulder. It hurt. "You horrible, disobedient, nasty little child!" Dar had venom in his voice, and it shocked me to my toes. Suddenly I felt incredibly small, rooted, terrified to the spot. Dar's ears slid back. He was in full-on Jurassic mode. William began crying. My bottom lip went mental, and then everything was silent, except for my rasping breath, William's sniffles, and the beat of my heart in my ears. I knew every bad word. Somehow, coming from Dar's mouth, this seemed even worse. "Take me home!" Dar was breathless. We headed back to the farm in silence. We turned the corner of the yard and were faced with a very long, fancy silver car sitting on the driveway. It seemed like the type of car a football manager might drive. Dar's face suddenly turned as white as my new trainer's. Carefully he lifted William from his lap. "Go bounce, little bean." William hugged Dar and scurried round the back of the house to the trampoline. "I'll be there presently. See if you can touch the clouds today." Dar waited for William to disappear from sight before wheeling himself slowly towards the car. I followed. Dar sighed and kicked the tire angrily. He exhaled deeply and continued sighing, each huff louder than the last, and peppered in between with hushed, feisty F-words. Then he turned to me. Dar's face had the look on it mine does when me and my mates do a brain liquor or a toxic waste challenge. I hoped he wasn't angry with me anymore, but couldn't tell. "Please don't copy this, Brandon," he fumed, "but he is a villain of the highest order." Dar sighed, grunted, then sucked up the contents of his lungs from deep within, spitting the contents of his mouth onto the car. "Who, Dar?" I asked, still shaken, but curious all the same. "A very bad man indeed." In shared silence we watched the revolting mess slide down the car's windscreen. "You must not, under any circumstances, mention anything to do with Pitchbury Wood. Anything to do with anything to do with Pitchbury Wood. Do you understand me?" Dar was deathly serious, and I was not going to cross him any more today. Ever again. Actually, on thinking about it, yes, Dar, I understand. I nodded hard to signify my total understanding. Still stinging from his rage, I pushed Dar back to the house. "Absolutely nothing." Dar's tone was superhero cold. We swapped over wheelchairs, and I scraped the mud from my boots onto the heavy iron crocodile at the back door. I remained quiet, and then we entered the house. Muttering and the sound of clanking crockery came from inside. I quickly wheeled Dar through, feeling his sense of urgency, as something serious was clearly going down. Dar composed himself for a moment, and then lifted the heavy door latch to the lounge.